Hello? Can you guys hear me? Good? Okay, I want to make sure I'm as clear as can be. Yeah. Hi, from Prairie. Let's start with, this is really pretty, right? It's kind of too pretty, I would say. Like, we're out here, it's like a sunny day, we're having like a good time, vibes are low. This is important on a local level to have these regular engagements, and I would consider this action, but action and responsibility to land back into environmentalism can go so much farther than just simple annual gatherings. Again, this is really important. This is some people's first interaction and such, and that shouldn't be diminished. But environmentalism should go always and care, because environmentalism is care for yourself, it's care for the environment, and it's care for the indigenous people on the lands that we're on. It always should go much farther and much more honorable in many other forms and ways of action. I want to distinctly talk about urban planning today and how that relates to environmentalism and displacement of Indigenous people. Indigenous people, thank you. As we can see, we're living in the world and we're paying attention. Most of the houseless in the city are Indigenous, and that is directly a correlation to colonialism and further occupation and violence they've experienced. The impacts of environmentalism we always see hits people that are doing at the worst, that are suffering the most scrutiny from injustices in the world. We see this regularly with flooding and pollution skyrocketing in these living situations that people are forced to live through because of injustice. Environmentalism is at its core about, and a lot of these actions is about taking care of people and the most vulnerable people. That's how it should always be. I would imagine a lot of folks here have reusable water bottles, right? Yeah? Y'all love reusable water bottles? That's great. Where's the nearest water fountain? Yeah, there's no water. Okay. There's no water fountain. That's great. That's not really a problem for us because most of us are house. Well, what about the Indigenous population and those facing with those not only Indigenous, but maybe you have a disability, you're diabetic, you're in a wheelchair, where the access to resources is so much more under a scrutiny, and it's more much of a daily action that you actually have to go through to get these things that you need. And it comes really easy to most of us because that's why we're here, because it's really maybe we just had to take our day off or other things, and that's why we're allowed to be here. It wasn't that much of a job to get here because we live nearby, we live in pretty nice apartments, or we have our nice car, our electric car that we could take here. A lot of people that would like to be here and are like to attending these events are not, because they're having to fulfill these duties that they have to attend to. They have to take care of the kids, they have to take care of their family, they have to work that job that they hate, and they would wish to be here but they cannot be because of that. And that connects directly to how environmentalism affects the people that are doing the suffering the most, and we don't get to see that visibility very often because these spaces and these times is not often accessible to folks. And that is something we must always keep in mind when we're doing things and how we interact. Like environmentalism, it isn't a far out and a stretched out idea. It is very entwined with our hearts and our minds. We need to pay attention to that, and how we move and interact in the world. It's much harder to pay attention to the rather far distant actions and things, but on local levels you can make really big differences and change how we take care of each other. That is extremely important Another thing, like just like there's no near water fountains and there's barely any public water fountains in the city, which is a concerning thing. Public bathrooms, there's no public bathrooms. There might be a couple around here, but go a couple blocks over, where do you? Nowhere, right? And that is directly in time with now we have to take care of this waste management, and we have to pay people, and that's directly going into consumption and how we view consumption. And now there is this waste of material that we're seeing, and it's a feeding loop. It's a feeding loop. We see it. It happens all the time. There's no public water fountains. Great. Now you have to go to the store. You have to buy a drink. Now you're buying a piece of plastic. But there's the coin cent that goes back to consumption, and it's not. Environmentalism isn't just like an aesthetic. What I'm trying to say is a consumption and how we consume and who gets to consume and who doesn't. And that is very clearly, like, it's very entwined with colonialism and the violence of colonialism and how it affects people. We can go on and on about how we can go on these nature trips and nature walks in these distances, yet we see a tent that someone's staying in because they're houseless, and we view it as filth and overconsumption, over waste. We see garbage piled up on the seat, and we view that as inadequate self-care and lack of care for the environment, and we fail to understand the implications and the conditions that people are forced into, in which they are consuming in that manner, and they are not taken care of. There's one garbage bin up there. Why is there one garbage bin up here? There's a public space. That's another thing. So people would like to participate. People would like to be doing this work and coming and speaking and participating, but the scrutiny that they're under and the systems that are in place doesn't allow for them. And that's just something I wanted to speak about today, for folks to acknowledge and take part in. Like, as much as we would like to do personal action, no amount of personal action that one person here is going to do today will ever overturn the indefinite, unconceivable amount of consumption and violence that is being perpetrated in these systems in place that directly entwine links to environmentalism. And we just need to really pay attention to that and acknowledge that, especially on these days when we can come out and speak and be amongst each other and have these hopeful thoughts and hopeful minds and feel re-energized and rejuvenated to make change and do things. We need to take and step back and also realize who is not here and why folks cannot participate. Because the second we start to look at folks as doing less than us, as doing more than it, is perpetrating these very clear divisions that then feed into, I would say that's even harmful consumption, if we're viewing people in that manner, of which that we're lacking of understanding of which how they are consuming is directly contributing to the systems in place. Poor people would love to be, and poor people are the most environmentally friendly group and class in this world, but it's often unacknowledged because they're not paying $10 lattes for oat milk and buying fancy tote bags. Like, it's so much more than that, and I just wanted to come up here and speak to notice that, and for folks to realize that environmentalism goes beyond and far beyond the grasp of what we commonly see and how we commonly interact with it. Yeah, that's all I had to say. Thank you.